In this lecture, I will introduce high leverage practices in special education. For the thinkers among us drawn to linear models, our topics are presented on this slide in the order in which each will be addressed. To accompany each topic is a verb that represents the cognitive objective according to Benjamin Bloom's hierarchical framework. The slight grade to the image shows that we will end the course with a charge to reach toward the highest level of creating. For thinkers who also like to see conceptual relationships or the big picture, this slide shows how we'll begin broadly and narrow our focus to a specialized subcategory, specially designed instruction. Specially designed instruction, or SDI. Let's begin with the definition. The current reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act defines specially designed instruction as adapting, as appropriate, to the needs of an eligible child under this part, the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction, one, to address the unique needs of the child that result from the child's disability, and two, to ensure access of the child to the general curriculum so that the child can meet the educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all children. We were given the legal definition. The next plan of attack for any stymied speller is to ask, can you use it in a sentence? The concept web here illustrates key ideas from the legal definition of specially designed instruction. SDI is a broad term that specifies the type of instruction students with disabilities should receive. At its core, SDI looks different for students with different strengths, needs, and abilities. SDI is provided at no cost to the student or students' families, and SDI aims to increase access to the general curriculum. SDI also allows a student to meet the goals and objectives outlined within an individualized education program, or IEP. So now that we've examined some key features of what specially designed instruction is, let's think about it. Imagine that a special education resource teacher states, all of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in my afternoon reading group have the same fluency goals on their IEPs, so I have been using Fountas and Pinnell's leveled literacy instruction. It seems to be going well. With the limited information that we have in this vignette, what are your initial thoughts? In what ways could this be an example of SDI? What would make it a non-example? Our second topic, nested within the broad category of specially designed instruction, is high leverage practices. This is the focus of the final reflection in 705. Terms like load, effort, and fulcrum might resonate with those among us who teach about simple machines in science. Each of us can probably think of a time when we've used a device to increase the amount of force we produced so that we could accomplish a task. There are many devices in your toolkits that can act as a lever. Cable cutters, side cutting pliers, nail clippers, fishing rods, scissors, and bottle openers are just a few examples. Each of the 7 teachers depicted on this slide has several techniques in their teaching toolkits that they use to make an impact on student learning and achievement. Let's push this idea even further. Imagine yourself as a teacher who embodies knowledge and skills that result in specially designed instruction. One characterization of your embodied knowledge would be the use of high leverage practices. The Council for Exceptional Children and the Collaboration for Effective Educator Development, Accountability, and Reform, CEDAR, recently published a collection of 22 high-leverage practices in special education that cluster around 4 themes: instruction, assessment, collaboration, and social-emotional behavior. CEC and CEDAR generated these 22 practices, and they are considered high leverage for kindergarten through 12th grade special education teachers. Under the category of collaboration for K-12 special education teachers, there are 3 high leverage practices. 1, collaborate with professionals to increase student success. 2, organize and facilitate the effective meetings with professionals and families. 3, collaborate with families to support student learning and secure needed services. Under the category of assessment, there are 3 high leverage practices. Use multiple sources of information to develop a comprehensive understanding of a student's strengths and needs. Interpret and communicate assessment information with stakeholders to collaboratively design and implement educational programs. After special education teachers develop IEP goals that evaluate and make ongoing adjustments to students' instructional programs. Under the category of social-emotional behavioral, there are 4 high leverage practices. Establish a consistent, organized, and respectful learning environment. Provide positive and constructive feedback to guide students' learning and behavior. Teach social behaviors. Conduct functional behavioral assessments to develop individual student behavior support plans. Under the category of instruction, there are 12 high leverage practices. Identify and prioritize long and short-term learning goals, systematically design instruction toward a specific learning goal, adapt curriculum, tasks, and materials for specific learning goals, teach cognitive and metacognitive strategies to support learning and independence, provide scaffolded supports, and use explicit instruction. These continue, use flexible grouping, use strategies to promote active student engagement, use assistive and instructional technologies, provide intensive instruction, teach students to maintain and generalize new learning across time and settings, provide positive and constructive feedback to guide students' learning and behavior. In this video, which I'll link on Canvas, we'll watch several demonstrations of high leverage practices number 8 and 22. And these focus on providing positive and constructive feedback to guide students' learning and behavior. The video clips linked on Canvas are freely available, publicly available online, and they run for approximately 20 minutes. Take a look at the work sample on the slide. We see 5 rows of student-written addition problems. The student has written 36 is the sum of 6 plus 3, for example, in row 1. The learning goal, lesson objective, and a note are provided on the slide. The learning goal for grade 3 is written as write addition number sentences. The lesson objective is given whole numbers 10 through 100, Tyree will use the split addition strategy to write number sentences. For example, 45 equals 40 plus 5 in 3 out of 5 opportunities. Note that the lesson in this learning segment involved the split addition strategy. This is also called break apart. With this strategy, students break numbers into their respective place value and they add to compute the sum. Write an example of positive and constructive feedback that you would provide to guide this student's learning. The more reflective you are, the more effective you are. Reflection. As special education teachers, we can name and describe what the 22 high leverage practices are, but this is not enough to match the task that faces each of us in classrooms. To develop and implement specially designed instruction, we have to do more than choose from a selection of tools. As vessels of embodied knowledge, we must flexibly use the 22 high leverage practices to meet a variety of changing needs. One way to do this is through explicit instruction. Explicit instruction is contained within high leverage practice number 16. What do we mean by use explicit instruction? Use Morris, Therian, and Benson define explicit instruction as a group of research-supported instructional behaviors used to design and deliver instruction that provides needed supports for successful learning through clarity of language and purpose and reduction of cognitive load. It promotes active student engagement by requiring frequent and varied responses, followed by appropriate, affirmative, and corrective feedback, and assists long-term retention through the use of purposeful practice strategies. This is a complete definition, and there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to refer to a video demonstration that I'll link on Canvas to help us unpack this definition. This video demonstration of high leverage practice number 16 runs for approximately 20 minutes. Of the 16 elements of explicit instruction, which stand out to you as the easiest to notice or observe and describe? Which features are likely to be present, but perhaps would be harder to give evidence that these features are in place? Part 4 of this module addresses intensive instruction. Recall that intensive instruction, or II, is a very specific demonstration of specially designed instruction contained within the high leverage practices. In this conceptual definition, we can catch a glimpse of the break-apart strategy again. Here, intensive instruction is what results when the facets of intensity intersect with instruction. To be intensive, instruction demonstrates 1, 2, or 3 attributes. First, the teacher decreases group size. For example, small group instruction changes to one-on-one instruction. Next, the teacher increases the frequency. For example, the number of sessions per week adjust from 3 to 5. And duration. A 20-minute lesson becomes a 45-minute lesson. Finally, the teacher adjusts complexity. In this case, complexity refers to the number of explicit instruction elements of the 16 total used during instruction. In part 3, we examined what those 16 elements of explicit instruction were. Another way to think about intensive instruction is as a process by which the intensity of an intervention is increased to match the severity of student need or lack of expected or adequate academic or behavioral progress. One hallmark of intensive instruction is the use of data to make decisions. To make decisions that are informed by data, we need a solid plan for collecting and representing data. Here are some examples of data that can be collected repeatedly over time and displayed visually in a line graph so that decisions can be made based on our interpretation of the pattern shown in the data. Number of words read correctly per minute, total words written, number of words retold after listening to a story, percentage accuracy on math calculations, number of steps in the task completed with fewer than 2 verbal prompts, number of seconds that lapsed between the teacher stating the direction and the student initiating the task or completing the task. What are some examples of data that you can currently collect, maybe about a student you're working with or maybe about a personal goal that you've set in your life?